Maximilien de Luca had always dreamed of climbing the culinary ladder. As a young boy in the gritty streets of Naples, Italy, he had watched his mother, an incredible cook, prepare meals that felt like magic. Her food told stories, she always said, and Maximilien believed it. But unlike his mother, Maximilien wanted more. He wanted to tell stories on grand stages for the rich and the powerful, leaving a legacy that would live forever. It wasn't just about food for Maximilien. It was about ambition, success, and status. He wasn't content to remain a simple cook in the bustling kitchens of Italy. He had dreams of Michelin stars, the prestige of fine dining, and the luxury of being revered by the culinary elite. Now, he was standing at the pinnacle of his dreams. Maximilien had worked his way up to become head chef at Le Gustave, one of the most renowned Michelin-starred restaurants in Paris. The gleaming kitchen, surrounded by the finest ingredients and elite patrons, was his stage. Every dish he crafted was his masterpiece, praised by food critics and admired by the world's richest clientele. It was a dream come true, or so he thought. But as Maximilien's fame grew, so did the pressure. The Michelin stars were not just a mark of achievement. They were a trap. The restaurant's owner, Claude Girard, was a shrewd businessman who had built the establishment on tightly guarded secrets that Maximilien was now on the brink of uncovering. One evening, while preparing a special tasting menu for an exclusive guest list of celebrities and international dignitaries, Maximilien was handed a note. It was from Claude himself, marked with a single, bold instruction: "Meet me in the vault." Deep within the restaurant's underground storage area was not just a place for storing fine wines and expensive ingredients. Maximilien had always been told it was a symbol of exclusivity, a private space where the restaurant's wealth was carefully protected. But no one was allowed in without Claude's personal permission. It was a place of secrets, a place where no one dared to venture. Curiosity burned in Maximilien as he walked toward the vault, his steps quickening. What could Claude possibly want? Was it an important business matter? Or was it something more, something personal? The thought of secrets, real, hidden secrets, tickled his mind. He had spent years in the kitchen, earning his place, but had he truly earned the trust of the man who owned the restaurant? When Maximilien reached the vault, he was surprised to find Claude already inside, standing by a stack of high-end cash that was neatly organized, far too organized for just a business transaction. "Maximilien?" Claude greeted him, with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Come in. I have something important to show you." The door closed behind Maximilien with a clunk that felt like a lock on his future. Claude gestured toward the stacks of cash and stacks of financial documents. "Do you know why I asked you here, Maximilien?" Claude asked, his voice smooth but edged with something deeper, something unspoken. Maximilien hesitated, eyes flicking nervously over the piles. Something was off. This was not a typical business matter. "I'm afraid I don't, Monsieur Girard," Maximilien replied, his voice betraying the tension in his chest. Claude took a slow step toward him, his eyes narrowing. "Because, Maximilien, you've been doing very well here. But you don't know the full picture." Maximilien's heart raced. This wasn't a normal conversation. He knew there were whispers in the kitchen, the rising profits, the questionable dealings, but he had brushed them off, believing they were nothing more than rumors. The restaurant had always been perfect, and Claude, the businessman, was beyond reproach. But as Claude's words sank in, Maximilien felt the weight of a dark truth pulling at him. "All of this," Claude continued, sweeping a hand over the documents and cash, "is part of the empire I've built. But there are things you don't see, things we've hidden away, for the good of the restaurant and the future of this business." Maximilien stared at him, silent, but his mind was racing. What was Claude talking about? Claude leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You see, Maximilien, the success of Le Gustave didn't come from just exceptional food. It came from more than that. The money we make isn't just from gourmet dinners. It's from laundering, hidden transactions, and deals with people who have very deep pockets. We've been running things under the table for a very long time. Maximilian's head spun. His heart skipped a beat. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "So, you're telling me," Maximilian asked, his voice barely above a whisper, "that this restaurant is involved in illegal activities?" Claude gave him a sly grin, nodding slowly. "Exactly. We've been involved in illegal transactions for years, Maximilian, and now you're in on it too." Maximilian's stomach churned. He had spent years perfecting his craft, but now he was faced with something far more dangerous. This wasn't a challenge of cooking. It was a challenge of morality. What was he willing to risk for success? "Why are you telling me this?" Maximilian demanded, trying to steady his breath. What does Claude want from him? Claude's eyes gleamed with something darker, almost predatory. "Because, Maximilian, I'm offering you a choice. You've earned your place here, but if you want to truly excel, if you want to be more than a chef, you'll need to make this secret part of your life. You'll need to help me with the operations. Think of it as a recipe for success, one you won't find in any cookbook." Maximilian's heart was racing, his mind spinning. His ambition had always been his driving force, but now that ambition seemed to be leading him down a path that was far darker than he ever imagined. Was he ready to risk everything? His career, his integrity, his future? Could he truly trust a man who had just shown him the skeletons in his closet? The question echoed in his mind. What did it take to become successful in a world so corrupt? Maximilian stood in the vault, the weight of Claude's words sinking deep into his gut. A flash of greed swept through him, and he found himself imagining the wealth, the fame, the power that could be his if he agreed to the deal. But another part of him, his moral compass, his integrity, fought back. Claude waited, watching him with those calculating eyes, the words hanging in the air like a thick fog. "I need you, Maximilian. We need each other." Maximilian closed his eyes for a moment. The weight of his decision pressed down on him like an anchor. Did he want to be the man who took everything, or the man who walked away from it all? His fingers brushed the cold steel of the vault door, his decision crystallizing in that moment. This would change everything. If you're loving this intense, dramatic story, hit the subscribe button and like this video to see what happens next. Maximilian's choices are just beginning, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Don't forget to turn on notifications to stay up to date with the twists and turns of this thrilling tale. The days following the meeting in the vault felt like a blur for Maximilian. He continued his work in the kitchen, but it was as though the weight of Claude's words had infiltrated every part of his life. His hands, once steady as he plated gourmet dishes, now trembled with a new kind of fear. It wasn't just the pressure to maintain perfection in his cooking. It was the guilt, the paranoia, and the overwhelming sense that he was being watched. Maximilian couldn't shake the feeling that his every move was under scrutiny. The prestigious restaurant, once his pride, now felt like a trap, a gilded cage. Every corner held secrets, and every shadow seemed to whisper of the dark choices he had made. Claude had offered him a deal that could change his life, but it came with a price. Maximilian was no longer just a chef. He had become a part of something much bigger, something that might cost him everything. The secret dealings, the money laundering, the criminal operations, they were now his responsibility, and the deeper he went, the more complicated it became. The clock was ticking. The authorities were closing in on legal staff. News of the restaurant's financial troubles had started to leak, and Maximilian had heard whispers of investigations underway. Every phone call, every email, felt like it could be the one that would expose him. His life was becoming a race against time. One evening, as Maximilian walked through the alley behind the restaurant, a shadow moved near the dumpsters. His heart skipped a beat. His pulse quickened. Was it the authorities? Had they finally found him out? Suddenly, a figure stepped into the light. Juliette. Her eyes were wide with fear, her usually calm demeanor gone. I didn't mean for any of this to happen," Maximilian stammered, his words failing to capture the gravity of his choices. But Claude, he offered me everything. All I ever wanted, Juliet. You've crossed a line, she said softly, her voice breaking. And now, you're not just risking your career, you're risking everything. Our future, my trust. It's all slipping away. Maximilian tried to explain himself, but Juliet turned and walked away without saying another word. The pain in her eyes was more than he could bear. In that moment, he realized the depth of his mistake. He had lost her. Maximilian watched Juliet disappear into the night, feeling a deep ache in his chest. The future he had imagined for himself was slipping through his fingers. Was it too late for redemption? Could he truly turn back? As the sound of her footsteps faded into the distance, Maximilian felt a chill creep over him. The pressure of his actions was mounting, and just as he prepared to retreat into the restaurant, the ring of his phone interrupted his thoughts. It was Claude. Maximilian. Claude's voice was smooth, but with an edge of urgency. We need to move quickly. The authorities are getting closer. Are you in or out? Maximilian hesitated. The decision was his. The ticking clock was getting louder, and with it, the weight of his choices. Was he willing to sacrifice everything, including Juliet, to secure his place in this world of deceit? If you're loving this intense, dramatic story, hit the subscribe button and like this video to see what happens next. Maximilian's choices are just beginning, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Don't forget to turn on notifications to stay up to date with the twists and turns of this thrilling tale. The extreme and counterintuitive trigger, Maximilian's dark descent. Maximilian's decision was made, but it came at a cost. Claude's world of crime pulled him deeper into the abyss than he ever imagined. Gone were the days of fine dining and Michelin stars. Now, Maximilian was tangled in a web of laundered money, hidden accounts, and deals that could bring down not only the restaurant but everything he had worked for. The restaurant's operations became a game of shadows. Maximilian was no longer just a chef. He was an active participant in a world of crime and corruption. Every evening he donned his apron like a mask, cooking meals for the elite while secretly funneling money through offshore accounts. The feeling of power was intoxicating, but so was the constant fear of getting caught. Each day he sank further into the dark underworld of illicit deals, watching the life he had built unravel. Juliet was gone, and even though he tried to focus on his work, a constant emptiness gnawed at him. He had lost everything. The fame, the accolades, the future he had imagined, gone. One night, during a lavish private event, Maximilian was serving a multi-course meal to a group of international investors. Everything appeared perfect on the surface. Crisp white tablecloths, fine wines, and the finest ingredients. But beneath it all, Maximilian's mind raced. He could feel the walls closing in. The authorities were tightening their grip. Whispers from the kitchen told him that the net was closing, and soon it wouldn't just be the restaurant that was in danger. It would be him. And yet, despite the mounting tension, Maximilian continued down the path he had chosen. The greed, the fear, the thrill of control, it was all consuming. Just as he was about to deliver the final course of the night, Maximilian's phone buzzed in his pocket. A single message that froze him in his tracks. They know. FOMO, fear of missing out. Trigger, Maximilian's final gamble. The message was a game changer. The authorities had discovered the missing funds. They had traced the laundered money back to Le Gustave. Claude had vanished, and now it was just Maximilian left to deal with the consequences. Was he the next target, or would he have time to cover his tracks? In the face of danger, Maximilian knew he couldn't go back. He couldn't undo his choices. But there was one way out, one final gamble that could allow him to disappear with the money, never to be seen again. But it meant betraying everyone, his colleagues, his reputation, and the last vestiges of his humanity. The game is changing, Maximilian. Maximilian's heart raced as the weight of his choices came crashing down on him. The clock was ticking, and with every second his options dwindled. Was there still time to escape with his newfound fortune, or was this the end of the road for him? The stage was set. And just as Maximilian prepared to make his move, the door to the kitchen opened and two detectives walked in. The game had just changed, and Maximilian was about to make the most dangerous decision of his life. If you've been captivated by Maximilian's fall from grace, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more. The air was thick with tension as Maximilian's mind raced. The detectives had entered the kitchen, their stern faces sending a chill through the air. He had heard the whispers, seen the signs, but this was different. The walls were no longer just closing in, they were crashing down around him. Maximilian forced himself to remain calm, but his mind was a whirlwind. How much did they know? How much could they prove? The money laundering, the illegal transactions, the hidden accounts, they were all leading back to him. One of the detectives, a tall man with sharp eyes, approached Maximilian de Luca, he said, his voice cold. We have a few questions about some suspicious activity coming from Gustav's financial accounts. Could you come with us? Maximilian's heart pounded. The moment had arrived. He had lived his life in fear of this very moment, and now it was here. I don't know what you mean, Maximilian stammered, trying to maintain his composure, but the detective didn't flinch. He slid a folder across the table. Maximilian's eyes widened as he saw the familiar logo of the restaurant at the top of the financial records. The money he had stolen was right there in black and white, traceable. You've made a series of large withdrawals over the last few months, Maximilian, the detective continued. And now we're looking at a pattern, one that leads directly to you. Maximilian's stomach turned. His own mistakes, his own greed had come back to haunt him. He had been so blinded by his ambitions, so consumed by his desires that he didn't see it coming. As the detectives asked their questions, Maximilian's mind spiraled. His ambition had led him to this point, but it wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about losing everything. His career, his reputation, and the woman he had once loved. He thought about Juliet, how she had tried to warn him. She had seen the darkness creeping into his life, and he had pushed her away. Now, he was facing the consequences alone. The memories of their time together, when they had dreamed of building a life, flooded his mind. The stolen millions couldn't fill the void. Juliet's absence felt like the most painful loss of all. Maximilian! The detective's voice broke through his thoughts. We need your cooperation. It'll go easier for you if you tell us everything. But Maximilian couldn't. His mind raced, but no words came. It was too late to turn back now. The betrayal he had committed against everyone, Claude, Juliet, and even himself, was irreversible. Maximilian's last decision. As the detective prepared to arrest him, Maximilian faced the undeniable truth. His empire of greed had crumbled. There was no escaping the consequences now. Would he face the punishment for his actions, or would he try to escape the world he had built? The clock was ticking, and time was quickly running out for him. If you're still hooked on Maximilian's rise and fall, make sure to like this video and subscribe for the final chapter. Will Maximilian face justice or run from it all? You won't want to miss the explosive conclusion. Stay tuned. FOMO, fear of missing out, Maximilian sat in a cold, sterile interrogation room, the detective's eyes boring into him. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. His thoughts were racing, but everything felt so distant, so empty. How had it all gone so wrong? He had been so close to everything he ever wanted, the fame, the fortune, the success, but in the end it had been nothing but an illusion. He had been warned. His ambition was his downfall. He had ignored the signs, thinking he could outsmart the system, but he had underestimated the cost of his choices. The door to the room opened, and in walked the detective who had interrogated him earlier. He was holding a thick stack of papers in his hand. Maximilian knew what it was. It was the evidence, the undeniable truth of what he had done. Maximilian, the detective began, his tone now softer. You're looking at serious charges, but we also know that you've been cooperating. If you give us everything, if you tell us who else is involved, you might be able to reduce your sentence. Maximilian could feel the weight of the decision hanging over him. He could rat out the others, secure a lighter sentence, and live out the rest of his life in relative comfort. Or he could protect them, Claude, Juliet, everyone he had betrayed, and take responsibility for his actions, no matter the cost. The choice was clear, but the weight of it nearly crushed him. His soul, the very core of who he was, had been tainted by greed and betrayal. But even now, at his lowest point, there was a sliver of honor left in him. Maximilian made his decision. He chose to take the fall for everything. He would pay the price for his ambition, his greed, and the lies he had told. He would never sell out his friends, no matter how deep the hole he had dug for himself. He looked up at the detective, his voice steady but filled with regret. "I'll take the full punishment. I did this. It was me. I can't hide from it anymore." As Maximilian was escorted out of the interrogation room, he knew his fate was sealed. But there was something different in his heart, something that felt like a final cleansing. He was ready to pay for his actions, the prison sentence, the shame, the fall from grace. It was all coming. And yet, deep inside, he knew there was still a chance for redemption, however small it may be. He couldn't change the past, but maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to rebuild his future from the ruins he had created. The end, or is it? Maximilian's story is a haunting reminder of the high price of ambition, the cost of betrayal, and the sacrifice for redemption. If you are moved by his journey, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and share this story with others. And remember, sometimes the most difficult part of success is knowing when to stop before it consumes you completely.